Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Jacqueline O'Monaghy. I'm one of the Education and Training Officers with Under One Roof, and we're delighted to be here today in conjunction with our partners at Perth and Kinross Council to bring you this webinar on damp and mould. So we have got quite a few people that have signed up for this event today. So I'll just go through the kind of welcome and introduction just now and just let people log on. We're delighted that we've got an external speaker today. We've got Joe from Mill Architects who is going to be chatting us through all things tenements and fabric construction. When it comes to damp and mould, we have got Kaylee here from Perth and Kinross Council who deals with missing shares. And we've got my colleague Rebecca, our comms officer under One Roof, who will be in the background doing all things technical on the webinar. So our format for today is a short presentation from Joe and then myself, and then we'll come back into the live area and we'll get on with our Q&A. We're going to be here for about an hour today. Depending on what device you're looking, as you look at your screen, you'll either have the menu across the top or to your right-hand side. The chat box is where you can put any comments that you have as we go along with the presentations, and it's where Rebecca will post links to articles on our own website and anything else that's pertinent to the discussion. And we've got the Q&A box, which is where we would ask you to put any questions that you have. As we go through the presentations, feel free to drop in any questions there, and we'll get to them at the end. We'll be here for about an hour today. Our session is recorded, so don't worry about frantically taking down everything that we're saying. You'll get a copy of the recording and a copy of the slide deck sent out to you by email within the next kind of 24 to 48 hours, so you can have a look at that at your own leisure. So I think I've covered everything on the welcome and introduction. I think we've got a good number of people here to just now. So Joe, I'll hand over to you and let's get started for the first presentation. Joe, you're on mute.
I'm not on mute.
No, you're not on mute, yeah. The
Thank
floor
you.
is
Can
yours.
everyone see? Can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Hi everyone. Thanks for coming along today. As Jacqueline says, myself and her are gonna talk about tenement, all things tenement, and Jacqueline's going to focus on the legals really more in terms of the new AWAB's law that is coming up, and also the other excellent resources that Under One Roof have. As a general introduction, my name is Jo Parry-Geddes. I'm a conservation accredited architect. I'm director of Mill Architects, and for the last 25 years have worked on traditional buildings, focusing on and assisting flat owners to try and carry out tenement repairs to their communal properties. So the purpose of our event today is whereby we'll be Under One Roof will be talking about the legals. I'll be discussing general maintenance issues in tenement construction, highlighting common problems that can be found hand in hand with damp and mould. We'll provide an awareness of importance of property maintenance and how to prevent problems. There's also a wee bit at the end about upcoming parliamentary issues that you might not be aware of. So, types of tenements. This is a funny one because not everyone understands really or appreciates what a type of tenement can be. It is classed, as is on the Under One Roof website, that a tenement is any building divided into two or more parts horizontally. So in Scotland, the Romano-Dutch law made it possible to purchase airspace with rights of support and shelter from flats above and below. And because in the cities, space was so tight, and they were allowed to build high, and we had a lot of stones, and at that time a lot of quarries still open. We did build high throughout all of our cities, which is why we have so many tenements as it stands today. Owners are jointly responsible with their co-owners to maintain the common parts of the tenement, which are those that provide shelter and support. So, as I said before, types of tenements, they come in various styles, periods and sizes. You've got your traditional tenement, your stone tenement and villa, mostly built before World War I. You've got your older brick and render flats, mainly social housing, built between 1920 and 1940. You've got your low-rise and your high-rise flats, mainly built by local councils, some of which are private ownership now, of course, in the 60s and the 80s. And then you've got the more modern estates in the last 40 years. So it really does cover an awful lot. And even if you are in a house divided horizontally, ground floor and the first floor, that is in fact classed by a tenement as a tenement, and you would be under the rules of the tenement law with that. So back to our point today. Why is it so important to maintain and look after your building? Traditional properties throughout Scotland are in a poor and failing condition and have been for quite some time. And in many cases, the owner of the flat has no idea of the condition of their building. And it's only until some water comes in through the wall or the roof or there's a stone fall that it occurs that they're forced to take action and actually find out what's going on and understand the condition of the property. A large proportion of buildings throughout Scotland are in poor repair due to general weathering, maintenance neglect, inappropriate yet well-intentioned at the time cement repairs, and also just the sheer difficulty to get your neighbours together and actually carry out a repair to the building. But of course, the awareness of the condition of the property and regular maintenance would reduce huge unexpected bills, both internally and externally. So we find ourselves in a bit of a catch-22 situation. Of course, by maintaining the property, we want to prevent what is the incentive to get together with your neighbours and maintain your property? You want to prevent water ingress, causing internal deterioration, rot, damp throughout the property. The photo to the top left is a property that I surveyed a couple of weeks ago, and that area has been caused by a damaged gutter and one slipped slate. So it just shows you how badly it can get out of control quickly. You want to prevent escalating repair costs. Regular maintenance will reduce larger unexpected bills at a later date, especially if they become enforced. You get a dangerous notice served or what have you, then you're forced into a position where you have to act quickly. And of course, that always comes with an increased cost and an element of panic. You want to maintain and increase the property's value, minimal risk to a new buyer, but also if you're a landlord, you want to be able to let your property out at the full rate that you want to let it out without there being any compensation or problems to your tenant. So back to basics, your typical tenement construction is basically a big thick wall. You've got 150 mil on the outside of stone. Inside, you've just got a load of rubbish, as you can see in the top left picture. And then internally, you've got your lath and plaster. So there is, I think there's a general lack of understanding of how much timber there actually is in a tenement. And of course, with timber, you get your damp, you get your rot, you get your mould, and from that can then all grow on your walls. You've got timber in the floor joists, the roof rafters, the roof sarking. You've got timber-safe lintels above your windows, and of course you've got the lath for the plaster to go onto. And when all this gets wet, you come up with a lot of pink hot spots, which you can see on the right-hand side diagram, which is a typical tenement whereby generally we tend to find problems. So typical fabric defects, these are pictures from my own projects that we found and resolved. We've got photos and diagrams demonstrating how easily defects can affect the condition of your flat. So the top one is obviously water leaking inside the building from a blocked gutter due to lack of maintenance. This has then soaked the beams, the timber beams, and then internally it has soaked the plaster. And of course, all that has got to such a dreadful state that it's collapsed and fallen away, causing expensive problems to fix. Leaking downpipes are a really common problem caused by, again, lack of maintenance or just not picking up on the fact that something's choked or blocked. It doesn't have to cost the earth to sort it out, but in time, it can saturate the stone, make everything very wet, very green, very mouldy, again leading to water going into your joists. The photo to the bottom right-hand side is a property where exactly this happened, and it's a timber-safe lintel, which is just kind of collapsed internally. So again, sometimes doesn't have to cost a fortune to fix, but if left unattended, can prove quite expensive. So here's a project I worked on a few years ago. It was an external tenement fabric repair. that we were managing and overseeing. When we got into the top floor property after reports of water ingress and a ceiling collapse, we knew the felt roof needed to be replaced. And as you can see with the blue arrow, there was a crack all the way along the edge of the felt roof, which was letting water in. When we investigated further, we realised that the continued water ingress over a period of time had led to a fairly significant outbreak of dry rot in the living and the kitchen room. The ceiling had collapsed and there was, yeah, it's quite smelly dry rot, so it was quite an offensive smell in the property. All the rooms had to be completely stripped and treated for the rot. The room was uninhabitable for a number of weeks. That was a property that was actually let out, so that was cost the landlord a lot of money to rehome. And it was very expensive to repair. And then you get into the argument of what is communal repairs, what is the owner's repairs, etc. And then you get back into the kind of complicated Tenement Act to be reviewed. So again, try and fix things quickly before it becomes a problem. So more consequences if you don't maintain your problem. Your property leading to mould and interior deterioration. Cement is very, very bad for your building, and well-intentioned in the 80s was, what was lathered over all of our buildings, as you can see in the middle photos, in cement pointing, cement render, covering up chimneys, balustrades, because it was a cheap and quick fix to kind of solidify the building back together again. Because cement traps water internally, it is forced to come out internally in what you can see here, which is peeling, effervescence, mould, and damp. So that is one of the reasons that you can get that happening within your building, is actually your outside might look absolutely fine to you, but it might be that it is cement rendered or there is cement pointing, and that is retaining the moisture, which is causing the internal problems. Basically, buildings need to breathe. So, damp and mould consequences if you don't maintain your property. There's the common problems that certainly I've come across in the last few years that we've been doing this. As can be seen in the previous slides, there's four previous sources of moisture that are likely to affect a building. One is penetrating from above, so the rain. So ingress through failure of roof components. This could be from a storm, it could be from lack of maintenance, it could be from the photo I showed you where the gutter had moved away from the building and there was one missing slate. Just basically where if your roof is open wide in a area, it can cause damaging effects. Penetration through cement, so as I said, through the wall, so actually penetrating through the building. That could be through cement, it could be through your damaged rainwater goods that we talked about there, and that in turn can then cause real problems internally. And actually probably something I see the most actually is from damaged rainwater goods. You get damp and mould caused from below, rising damp, mainly to do with external ground levels and distribution of water around the building, moving up walls. And then, of course, you've got the users of the building, the internal moisture vapour. Building occupants can generate a considerable amount of moisture. When you think about it, if you've got 4 people living in a flat, they're all having showers, they're not putting on the extractor fan, or maybe the extractor fan doesn't work properly, they're boiling their potatoes, they're drying, they're washing. That's a lot of moisture in the air, and ventilation and heating does help that. So, Awaab's law, which Jacqueline's going to talk about in more legal terms than I am, but the Scottish Government is extending the principles of Awaab's law in the private renting sector from March, we think, could be later on, 26. I think they're still to confirm the date. Jacqueline will let us know about that. Landlords will have a legal obligation to investigate and resolve complaints about damp and mould within strict timelines. And I think that's the important thing. It needs to be fixed quickly, but that in turn can cause panic and maybe not looking at the whole problem holistically of the building. What is mould? Mould is all around us. It needs a food source and moisture to grow. It's a type of fungus that grows on surfaces of damp and humid conditions like what we've been talking about. Too much moisture and not enough ventilation and heating will create internal moisture, which will condense on the building fabric, and the source of which could be from a number of issues that we've already discussed. So important to find out the source. important to find out what's causing it before trying to fix it. Who was Awab? He was a 2-year-old boy who tragically died in 2020 from a severe respiratory illness caused by prolonged exposure to mould in his social housing flat, despite his family repeatedly reporting the issue. So this law was created in his memory, but also to protect tenants, legally ensuring landlords to investigate and fix serious health and safety hazards like damp and mould. So a really important law, and sadly one that's had to come into effect to the detriment of a family. But the good that can come of this, and if it helps improving living conditions, then what a fantastic thing to happen. I think that with mould, people think that there could either be a quick fix or it's going to be horrendously expensive. And I think it's really important to get professionals in to review the overall and holistic condition of the building so that you can work out where it's coming from. Again, you have the problem of the common owner, the common ownerships, who's responsible if it's internal, what's causing it, and that's why it's important to find out the actual cause of the problem. But Jacqueline will go into more of that in her presentation. Other changes to the law, which we've been working on quite hard, and Under One Roof have been working at quite hard, is there's a motion in Parliament at the moment to change 3 things within tenements. One is that there will be a quinquennial, we call it, a 5-yearly tenement inspection, which would be open for all, basically a more in-depth home report with a lot more information that would be open to the whole tenement and for anyone who was buying or selling the property. Number 2 is the establishment of compulsory owners associations. The Scottish Law Commission have just spent the last 2 years assessing the legalities and possibilities behind us doing this, and they've recently issued their final paper, which advises that it is indeed possible to establish and provides further insight into how this can be achieved. So very much watch this space, because that's only just been issued, and from that, I know I'm certainly involved in more meetings. There's more parliamentary meetings to be had. So we are hoping that this will come into force in the next couple of years or so. And if it does, it is very much going to change how tenements are repaired and maintained in the future. The third thing is the establishment of building reserve funds. And that's whereby everyone in your flat might put in £50 or £100 or whatever it is a month to maintain and repair your building, maybe clear out your gutters, sort out any missing slates or what have you. Really common in Europe, basically comes hand in hand with the establishment of owners associations. We're pretty much the only country that don't do this. But currently item 2 is the only item which has been reviewed by the Law Commission, but all 3, as you can appreciate, kind of come hand in hand. And why we're doing this is because we're trying to make the maintenance repair of tenements a lot easier, because it is so difficult, as Kaylee will tell you in the missing shares department of the council, to get everyone on board and to make sure as well that you're doing the right repair, to focus on the problem, you're doing the right thing for the building, and that it's not just a temporary repair that's going to fall apart in a couple of years. And also to make sure that the repairs you're doing are in the right order as well is really important. So how to ensure minimal problems or fix the problems that you have. We would always recommend, first of all, to make your building safe, first and foremost. So if you're aware of dangerous masonry in the building, then that should be dealt with immediately by either getting someone to come and make it safe with a hoist, removing all that loose masonry, which we see so often. That's number 1. Obviously, dealing with water ingress problems as well. If they're significant, you could carry out a temporary repair. 2, carry out an inspection. So building inspection reports are a really good way to ascertain the overall condition of your property. And we do recommend that if there's damp and mould in your property as well, just to have a good look at the fabric and determine if that is something that needs to be dealt with. So we would recommend that you would get a professional in to carry out your building report inspection from an architect or a building surveyor who is conservation accredited, understands traditional buildings and understands how they fit together and how the problems can occur. then arrange for the required repairs, which can come in all shapes and forms, all sizes, from small scale to larger scale. And then, of course, once you've done your repair, so important to do your regular maintenance to make sure you keep on top of it and don't have any bigger problems. So building inspection reports, certainly for me, is where everything comes together and starts, because that can be issued to all of the owners and they can then understand the condition of their property. So I'm now going to hand you over to Jacqueline. I've put my email address here at the back of the slides, which will get sent over to you. And if you have any questions at all, let me know. And I hope this has been helpful this morning. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jo. That's absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate you taking us through that, and I'm sure the audience have found it really, really useful. Let me just do a bit of jiggery pokery here and share my screen. Okay, lovely. Like a wee technical issue just to come up. Right. Hang on a wee second, guys. I'm so sorry. I don't know what is going on here. We have a look here. Okay. Right. Let me try that again. Lovely. Right, we're in business now. Excellent. Sorry about that. Okay, just gonna go through a couple of these slides. Right, so why are we kind of talking about damp and mold? Why is this all exploded? Jo's explained about AWAB's law that's imminent. And if you, whether you follow the housing news on a regular basis, or you just kind of dip your toe into it, depending on your situation as an owner or a landlord, really, this is all kind of come to the fore from the new Housing Scotland Act. It was being presented on and consulted on in Parliament last year, and the bill was given royal assent in November last year, and we now have the newest iteration of the Housing Scotland Act, the Housing Scotland Act 2025. Parliament or the government will be working through Parliament on all of the secondary legislation to implement everything to do with the Housing Scotland Act 2025. But what's important for us to note today is about paragraph 47, where it talks about the tolerable standard and damp and mould. We should all be aware as landlords what the tolerable standard is, as well as landlords also with owners. That is your minimum standards that a property has to meet in Scotland to be considered fit for human habitation. And quite importantly, it was noted within the 2025 Act that the ministers could further specify circumstances in which a house is to be considered to be substantially free from rising or penetrating damp. So before we get into AWAB's law and what that's likely to contain and how you can get started on things now, I just want to refresh your memory on the tolerable standard itself, okay? The tolerable standard was introduced through the 1987 Act, and it currently sits in repairing standard regulations, and it's one of the elements that you have to comply with in order to comply with the overall repairing standard. So you should be aware of it. There's 11 elements to the tolerable standard. So your property has to have structural stability. It has to have freedom from rising or penetrating damp, natural lighting, ventilation and heating, satisfactory thermal insulation, adequate hot and cold sink facilities, an adequate supply of wholesome water, sanitary conveniences within the home, satisfactory facilities for the preparation and cooking of food, effective systems for drainage and disposal of wastewater, adequate access to external doors and outbuildings, and an adequate and safe electrical installation. So I would really like you to have a think today about the property that you own and the building. Can you meet this tolerable standard? Ideally, you want to meet this in all aspects of the repairing standard, but for the for the premise of damp and mould, you have to be able to meet these elements of the tolerable standard. And we're finding more and more that there are a lot of fabric issues with buildings that owners are just not collectively being proactive on and dealing with. And that can obviously then lead to damp and mould development within the properties themselves, which obviously is not pleasant for anybody to live in and has serious health implications. But we need to get on top of this, and we need to start looking at not just what's happening within the four walls of our property, but what is actually happening within the building itself. So we have AWAB's law, which is pending. As I say, it was included within paragraph 47 of the 2025 Act, and the Scottish Government its intention is to extend the principles of AWAB's law into the private rented sector and the social housing sector in Scotland from March this year. So it's only a couple of months away. The Cabinet Secretary is introducing the secondary legislation to Parliament on Wednesday this week, I believe, where it's to be voted on. So we should hopefully have more information as the week goes on as to what the plans are for implementing this. Why are we implementing AWAB's law? It's part of the wider effort to raise standards in Scotland's housing sector. And we recognise that there are serious issues with damp and mould across our housing stock in Scotland, and nobody wants to be in a situation where there's going to be a repeat of what happened to Awab and his family, and nobody wants a loss of life as a result of damp and mould growth. So what will that mean for you as a landlord? Well, you'll have a legal obligation to investigate and resolve complaints about damp and mould, and you'll have strict timeframes to comply with in the repairs process. There's been a lot of questions over what can it take the Scottish Government will have one AWAB's law in Scotland, and it was announced last week alongside the Cabinet Secretary's plans to introduce secondary legislation in Parliament on Wednesday this week. That the Scottish Government is intending to adopt the English model for AWAB's law. So Rebecca will put a link to that in the chat, and it's going to be a really good idea for you to have a look at that in your own time so you can understand it. But what it is going to mean is that you are going to have to act, and you are going to have to act extremely quickly, in some cases within 24 hours, when your tenant advises you that there's an issue with damp and mould growth within a property. So what can you do just now to try and get ahead of this? Really, really important. You need to get out and visit your property, okay? Whether you're working with a letting agent or you're self-managing a property, you need to get along there as soon as possible so that you can review and check your compliance with the repairing and the tolerable standards. Remember, under the private residential tenancy agreement, we have got authorised purposes for access to a rental property, and those are to carry out inspections, to carry out works, and to carry out evaluation in accordance with the repairing standard. So if you're here and you're thinking it's really tricky for me to get access from my tenant, they're very, very difficult. In some cases, they just completely refuse access to the property. It is an authorised purpose, and if you can't get access, you can't agree on anything with them, then you can apply to the first tier tribunal for them withholding access for an authorised purpose. So there is a way around that. You need to get in there, you need to have a look at the property, check it complies with the tolerable and the repairing standard. You need to start to take action when you receive complaints about damp and mould, whether you've got something that's, sitting in your inbox at the moment, whether your agent has been in touch with you about it in the past, or you know that you've dealt with it in the past, or you're concerned that there's an issue with the building that could affect your property. Please, please, please start to take action now. Arrange a visit to the property. It might be if you've got black mold growth and it's in an area that you can reach, that you use something to clean that. It could be that you use hot water and bleach solution. It might be that you use a specific mold and mildew remover spray, but it's a really good idea that you go around to the property, have a look, and see if you can clean off anything that's there. And then you can take photographs of how it was beforehand, how it was after cleaning, and you can arrange a follow-up visit to see how things are going. You might think, Jacqueline, there's absolutely no way I'm going around there and cleaning off black mold just because somebody's not opened a window. But my response to that is this is very likely to be a part of AWAB's law. It is in England, and you really are going to have to be proactive here. It's so important that you have got a dossier of evidence to support what you've done. You need to be able to demonstrate, okay, this is the email or the text, whatever it was that I received from my tenant saying this is the issue. This is when I arranged a visit. This is what I found. Here's a photograph of it. This is the work that we did. Here's what it looks like after. I've gone back X amount of days or weeks later to have a look at it. Here's a photograph of what I found, and here's any follow-up action that I've taken. If you're working with a letting agent, then review their policies and procedures and your terms of business agreement with the agent to understand within that contract who's going to be responsible for this. Is the agent going to do it on your behalf, or are they going to kind of come back to you and ask you to deal with that? But start to have a think about it. Make sure that you've got an effective heating system in your property, and that if you've got insulation there, that it's the right type for the property that you have. Home Energy Scotland is a great resource to go to if you're thinking about changing your heating system. You know that there's been repeated problems with it. You're not sure if there's insulation in your property or not. They've got surveyors that can come out and have a look at your property. They have also got access to grants and funding for landlords for new installations. So have a chat with them if you're concerned about it. Make sure that your heating system is regularly serviced and that radiators are being bled as well. Why are you doing that? Well, you obviously need to have your heating system working at the optimum level so that your property is warm, so that it's heating the property up, it's keeping the tenants warm, and it's allowing for anything that could potentially be happening in there to dry out. Make sure tenants have got instructions on how to bleed radiators. They've got a key to do that, and they know why they need to do that. Also, make sure that your tenants have got copies of all the safety check certificates for the annual renewals that you have carried out and for any service paperwork that you have. If you're working with a letting agent, it's a good idea to check in with them to make sure that they're sending the tenants copies of it and that you've also got copies of the paperwork yourself. Ventilation systems are so important in properties. We often hear, particularly in the discussion narrative around damp and mould, about lifestyle issues, which we're trying to move away from now, and AWAB's law moves away from that. And it's not just about how a tenant is living in a property, it's also about what is actually happening with the fabric of the building, and what needs to be done to repair that and to maintain it in good condition. Ventilation is so important. As I say, a lot of the discussion narrative is around, well, keep the heating on low and open up the windows at the same time. So you've got, you've got the warm circulating and you've got fresh air circulating. You need to make sure that the ventilation systems that are within your property are actually operational and that they're working to their full potential. So make sure when you go around, check that all your windows open properly. It sounds silly, but it's amazing how many times you can find that a handle's broken. If it's a sash and case window in a traditional property, a rope could have snapped, the weights could be off, the windows may not open and allow for that free movement of air. It might be that if it's a traditional property and you have got a window behind the kitchen sink, you need to give the tenant a pole so that they can hook it onto the window to open it. So have a think about that and what's in your property and what you need to do to review that. Make sure if there's windows that have modern windows that have got vents, trickle vents in them, that they're all open, and that they're free from debris. It's amazing how much they just kind of fill up with dust and debris. So make sure that they do open, free any that are stuck, and make sure that they're clean so that you've got that allowance of airflow. Even if the tenant is in great at opening windows, or for whatever reason it's just not always possible to do that, like we're in the depths of winter, then having those trickle vents open does actually make a difference. It does help with the airflow, so make sure that they're operational. Any extractor fans that you've got in your property in kitchens and bathrooms, make sure that those mechanical extractor fans are working to their optimum. Make sure that they're connected into a proper duct and that all the hot humid air is not just venting into the ceiling space. Or if you've got an internal kitchen and you've only got a cooker hood with a carbon filter, think about actually installing mechanical ventilation in there so that the hot humid air can be extracted properly. But it's really important to make sure that fans are working correctly, that they are free from debris, and that they're properly connected and ducted out to an external source. As Joe says, it's really important to know your building's condition. So whether you're a new owner or you've owned your property for a long time, but you've maybe not really been involved in common repairs, there's not a lot happened, speak to some of your neighbours, speak to a property factor if you've got one, and have a chat about the repair history for the building and try and find out what may or may not have happened. It might be that you know that there's something pretty serious going on with your building. It could be that you know that there's slipped slates. It could be that you know that when it rains, the gutters, it's like Niagara Falls, and you're having difficulty with the other owners and getting engagement. It might be that you need to speak to environmental health to see if there's any support that they can offer you. It's a good idea where there's a garden to check who owns the garden, have a look at your title deeds. And if that's a usable space, we often find that again in the discussion narrative around damp and mould and lifestyle issues, oh, well, people are dry and wet washing inside. Okay, well, in the depths of winter, there's probably not much other choice for people but to do that. However, in the warmer months, is it possible that if there's a garden, is it usable? Is there a drying green set up for people? If the garden's full of junk or it's overgrown and nobody's ever done anything about garden maintenance, then it's a good idea to have a chat with the other owners and see if that's something that you can do so that there is a usable space for people to dry clothes. As Joe said, it's another important thing that you can do is speak to the owners in your building and organise a professional building survey. If you don't have a clue what's happening in your building, it's been a while, or somebody's saying something to you, and you're not sure if it's right or not, then get a professional in, have the building surveyed, have that condition report, and know exactly what you need to deal with as priority, and what you can, save towards for the future, knowing what needs to be dealt with imminently and what it could have maybe another 5 years in it, or something that you're going to have to save up for. Knowledge is power, so you need to know what's happening. So as we say, why is it important to maintain and look after your building? We need you to know as an owner, as a landlord, what your responsibilities are, not just within the property itself and complying with the repairing and the tolerable standard, but also what your responsibilities are as a co-owner for the shared common areas of the building and the building itself. You need to be aware of what your responsibilities are. You need to know the condition of the building. You want to reduce where possible, in an ideal world, completely eradicate, constantly reacting to repairs, avoiding those high unexpected bills, that kind of friction that develops when you're like, oh, is that her on the phone again? Or I've got an email from him upstairs saying I need to pay another couple £100. I'm just not dealing with that. You have to deal with that. You've got a legal responsibility as an owner to maintain the building, not just your flat. You need to have adequate building insurance in place for your property. Rebecca will post a link in the chat to a separate webinar that we're doing with Jo in a couple of or next month, sorry, on insurance. So it's a really good idea to review your building insurance policy, make sure that you have got adequate cover for the reinstatement of your building. We've obviously we're well aware of the issues in Scott Street in Perth. There's been other fires and building collapses in Glasgow and other towns and cities across Scotland. We need to have adequate building insurance in place, and we have to have regular communication with owners. I'm not saying that you've got to become best friends with all the owners in the building. I know that modern life is, we're all kind of ships at pass in the night, but we need to have, where we have got owners in a tenement building in Scotland, this radio silence, this I'm not answering that, I just don't want to engage with that person, or anything like that has got to stop. You're all responsible in common with each other for your building, and you need to be in communication with each other. There needs to be some kind of rapport there, and regular communication to figure out what needs to happen with the building, and to put maintenance plans in place, and make decisions on what you're going to do to prioritize work, and try and remove or repair issues with damp and mould that are having serious effects on people's health and well-being in properties. So what are our top tips for tenement owners? We want you to know who the owners are in your building. There's no point in saying, right, I'm going to get in touch with folk, or yeah, we'll arrange a meeting if you don't know who the people are. So get in touch with people, compile a list of the owner's contact details, and circulate that, so that all owners have got that information. Nobody wants to be in the situation where there's a fire, flood, or catastrophic incident, and we're scrambling around thinking, who's on the top floor, who's here, who's there. We need to know who people are. We've got lots of resources on our website, Rebecca, and we'll do a link to one of the pages on how to contact people, and the support that's available if you just don't know who an owner or owners are within your building. As Jo said, owners associations, it's been reviewed by the Scottish Law Commission and presented to Parliament, that mandatory owners associations should happen in Scotland. So that will happen. It's not a wish list anymore. It is on the horizon. So if you don't have an owners association for your building, or you're thinking, we don't even know who folk are, let alone be ready to establish an association, or you could be in the situation where we've got pretty good contact, this is a natural next step for us. Have a look at the resources that we've got on owners associations, so that you can stay one step ahead, so that when it becomes mandatory, you've already got things set up. It's a really great idea that when you're getting people's contact details, that you ask them about their building insurance policy. If you don't have a block or common policy, so one policy that each owner pays a share of, you all have individual policies, then under tenement law, as well as mortgage conditions, you can ask people for a copy of their building insurance policy, so that you know that they have insurance in place. And if it's been a while since you've had a valuation survey to know the reinstatement valuation of your building, then consider getting a building surveyor to do that for you. Nobody, again, wants to be in the situation where there's been a catastrophic incident, you're relying on insurance payouts to reinstate part or all of the building, and then you find out that people are underinsured, or they have no insurance. So please do have a think about that. We've talked about building surveys and why they are important, but it's also a really good idea to get together with the owners and have a chat about doing regular inspections of the common areas. It's not rocket science, it's just a case of when you're going along to do a visit to the property to check your compliance with the repairing and tolerable standards. Whether your flat's on the ground floor or the top floor, go up and down the stairs, have a look at the common areas inside. What are they looking like? Is there any signs of damp and mould in the common areas? Have you got windows in the stairs? Do they open properly? Is the main door in decent condition? Does the door entry system work? Is the stair light in there? Have a look from the street, go to the opposite side of the street and have a look back at your building. Do the downpipes look like they're in good condition? Are they rusted? Can you see that the stonework is wet? Do the gutters, have you got foliage growing out there? Have you got a full tree or just some weeds, whatever it may be? Can you see anything that is pointing you in a direction of there's potentially water ingress happening here, which means that we're likely to have some form of damp and mold somewhere in the common areas or in one or more of the properties that we need to take action on. It's super important that as part of your planned maintenance schedule, that you have got somebody coming out to clean your gutters on a regular basis, ideally annually, but if you're in a particularly leafy area, you might need to do that twice a year. It's a really good idea to have somebody check your roof every year so that you know what's happening with that. We all know winter weather, the storms that we're having, that anything can kind of happen that can cause issues with our roofs, with our buildings in general. We need to be on top of that and checking things are okay. It's a really good idea to have a chat with the owners so that you can start saving for future repairs, whether that's as a result of the inspection report or survey that you have carried out, or just, that you have an awareness of what's happening in your building. We need to start getting some money together. It's a good idea when you're considering an owners association to open a maintenance account for your building. There's banks and building societies that offer those types of accounts. We've got information on our website about it, so have a look at that. Rather than, I think, we're moving out of the days of where it was just, Mrs. Such and such on the first floor has got a wee kitty for the building, or we just pay it all into one person's personal bank account. We're moving away from that. And we want to, have a separate bank account for the building, where we've got, a bit more security for where funds are being held, and that there's a bit more transparency and accounting processes in place for all of the owners knowing where the money is going. If you've got a factor for your building, great. It's a really good idea to try and establish a good relationship with your property factor, that you're having regular meetings with them, that they're carrying out site visits. Not all factors do that. Not all properties out with the West of Scotland are factored, but where you do have one, it's a good idea to kind of know what their written statement of services agreement states about what they will do for you as a factor, what they what their responsibilities are to owners, what their policies and procedures are, so you know what they will do and what they're relying on you for. Ultimately, the property factor doesn't own the building. You as owners do that. They're there to manage it on your behalf, but they can't act without your instruction. Likewise, if you don't have a factor and you're self-factoring, we've got resources on our website about what it means to be a self-factoring building. And I know that Perth and Kinross Council have got a great relationship with Novaville, which is the shared repairs app. So it's a good idea, if you've not already had a look at the Novaville app, that you consider that and registering your building on there, so that it's a way for the owners to communicate and make decisions on and pay for small-scale repairs. It's maybe not as great for large scale repairs where you would need an architect or building surveyor support. But if you are struggling to kind of get common repairs done in your building, it's baby steps. It's a good idea to have a look at Novaville and see if that would work for you. So how can we support you under one roof with all things damp and mould? Well, effectively, our website is an updated version of the tenement handbook that our founders John Gilbert and Annie Flint wrote back in the mid-90s. We've got lots of informative articles, architects' drawings. We break down the technicalities of repairs anything that you can kind of imagine that would go on with a building, we're likely to have an article on it. We've got lots of resources on the management side of being an owner within a tenement building, and how we can kind of help you navigate that. So if you're not familiar with our website, go on and have a look at it. We've also got our Ask an Expert inquiry service where you can click on a link on the homepage, fill out a form, and it'll come to me or my colleague Stephen. We'll have a look at your inquiry and get back to you normally within a couple of days, and just give you a bespoke answer to your particular inquiry, point you to relevant pages on our website or external resources, and where we would recommend that you seek professional help. But we want to make sure that our building stock and the fabric of buildings is in the best condition that it can be in, and that we're addressing those issues before we start to deal with the kind of the micro repairs at flat level, and particularly where we've got damp and mold. It's really common that we're hearing from people, oh, it's been established that I've got dry rot on my property. I want to go ahead with the repairs. Do I just have to pay for that, or do all the owners have to pay for it? Well, hang on a minute. It's not just appeared out of nowhere. What's the primary source of that? Oh, we've got a roof issue. We've got a gutter issue. Well, great. That's what we need to focus on first of all, and then deal with the internal issue within your property. There's no point in going ahead with repairs at kind of micro level within your flat if you've not dealt with the overall primary site, because ultimately what's going to happen is that it's either going to spread, or you're going to spend a fortune and it's going to come back again. So we have to be dealing with the root causes of the fabric issues that are causing damp, mold, rot to develop within our properties, within our homes. So I'll stop sharing my screen at the moment. You'll get a copy of the slide deck and my email address, so you can come back to me one-on-one if you want to. But Rebecca, I'll hand over to you for the Q&A, and Joe and Kaylee are going to join us on screen for that as well.
Lovely, thank you so much, Jacqueline. Thanks to Joe as well. They were both great presentations. We have several questions, all from Angus, who is the real star of the comment section today. Thank you, Angus.
Thank
Well
you.
done, Angus.
Absolutely. So our first question is, would water penetrating through cement be obvious to the naked eye? So Joe, what you were saying earlier about when you've got cement on the walls and it sort of stops the
Sometimes it is really obvious, because cement will eventually deteriorate the stone around it, and cement will eventually fall off itself. So sometimes it is very obvious. Sometimes the cement will still be hard and intact, and that point, no, probably not, because, to the naked eye, how would you know whether it was cement, lime mortar, what was going on with it, the type of pointing, etc. But if it's deteriorated badly enough, then yeah, it's obvious. If that helps.
It does.
I'm sure it does, thank you. Our next question is, who would make a final judgment as to whether mold is caused by building faults or resident living, such as drying clothes or not opening vents?
Yeah, I think that when we get the detail of how AWAB's law is going to look in Scotland, and we know exactly what the categorisation of issues is going to be, the timescales next to them, and just the overall general coverage of what that will be. If people have got damp and mold in their properties, you'd really be, I guess, I wouldn't say final judgment. It would be you would be seeking professional help if you have done all the kind of topical things that you can do to clean off mold from walls. It might be that you've got a lot of furniture against external walls. You've done all the kind of troubleshooting and triage. You've checked windows open, you've checked vents are open, that you've got sufficient ventilation, your heating system's working. You've given the tenants guides on drying clothes indoors, regularly heating and ventilating the property. If you then seeking professional help from there, and it can be established, okay, it's glaringly obvious that you have got like half a tree growing out your gutter, you know, or you have got something going on in the roof, or I can see something externally on the stonework, then you know you would be following that professional advice.
I mean, I think as well, I think common sense prevails, doesn't it? So if
Yeah.
you've got a lot, like the photos that I've showed in the presentation, if you've got water ingress marks and mould in a dormer, you know, it's clearly a roof problem that needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
If you've got black spots directly above your shower head, you know,
Yeah.
maybe we need a better extract fan, or maybe it's not going on. So
Yeah, that's
who makes
it.
the final decision? We don't know yet, Angus. We don't know.
Yeah.
But there's many different people that can help to try and find the source of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Following on from that, could a situation arise where the tenant is not opening vents, drying, washing indoors, and causing black mould, but the landlord is required to pay to have it cleaned?
Quite possibly, yeah. There is, it's highly likely that that will be something that's included within AWAB's law, that they'll be looking for landlords to take that initial action to, you know, identify what the issues are, and to do that kind of triage. And it might mean, yeah, that landlords are going to have to clean that mold off. I would be shocked if that's not part of it. As I say, Joe and I don't know the finer points of it. We've not got a crystal ball, unfortunately. But yeah, it is highly possible that that is going to happen. And obviously, a landlord or letting agents will have to get information together to give to tenants to say, this is, you know, this situation arises, that this is what you do. You know, they've got a kind of troubleshooting guide, they've got a direction or a directive on what action to take, but it is highly likely that in the first instance the landlord is going to have to do that.
Great, thank you. Another one from Angus about building surveys. If the council owns part of a building, would they pay their share of a building survey?
Yeah, Kaylee, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so I'm actually involved in a few mixed tenure common repairs. Generally, the policy for PKC is that if PKC owns the majority of the building, then they'll go ahead and they'll instruct any surveys or repairs that are needed. If the building is majority privately owned, then that needs to be organised by the owners, and PKC will pay their share as long as all of the conditions of the TMS have been met. So that would require for there to be a majority of owners who have voted in favour of a quote to have a survey carried out or works completed. So as long as those conditions are met, then PKC will pay their share as if they were any other private owner.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We've got another one about mixed tenure properties. In properties where the council are joint owners and are sort of de facto factors, will they be required to do regular inspections?
I wouldn't necessarily say that just if they're joint owners, they're de
No,
facto
not in my
factors.
experience.
No. Kaylee, correct me if I'm wrong, but
The joint responsibility, just because the council own it. And this is
Yeah.
where we get a bit icky, isn't it? A grey space. Sometimes people do think that the council are responsible for a lot more than they're actually responsible for.
yeah,
And which is, you know, why we're in the position we are with Parliament and enforcing owners associations and the like. But of course, it's a matter of trying to get hold of someone in the council, the right person who can act as that owner, as it were.
yeah. But Kaylee, you guys at PKC, you wouldn't be classed as de facto factors in that situation, right?
Well, there are some buildings, again, it's where PKC is majority, so you tend to find it more with tenement buildings that have been entirely owned by the council
Yeah.
and had they then sold some off. So there's some private ones in there. So where the PKC is a majority owner, there are a few buildings where they're also the factor, so they take
Uh-huh.
care of, I know there's some of them that have lifts, so they take care of the lift repairs and
Uh-huh.
changing lights and stairwell cleaning and things like that. So
Yeah.
that generally tends to only happen where PKC is a majority owner.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So it's a good idea for people to, you know, as they're finding out who the other owners are in the building and putting together that contact list and insurance information and stuff like that, if they come across the fact that the council own properties there, that they reach out to you guys to establish whether you are doing any property factoring within the building or not, because it's amazing how many owners won't necessarily know that, even though they've owned a property, whether they just bought it last month or they've owned it for you know, a number of years. Not everybody is aware, so it's a good idea just to double check.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
just has a comment in the chat from Louise, who is from PKC's housing repairs team,
Okay.
about the blocks that PKC owns.
Oh, okay, great. 6 multi-storey blocks in Perth, and all others are dealt with through the tenement management scheme and shared ownership. Okay, fantastic.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. We've got one more question that is less about damp and mold and more about fibre optic cables
Okay,
and timber
let's go for it.
lintels. Cool.
Seeing it.
Madeline asks, can I have an opinion on City Fibre, which I assume is a fibre optic cable company,
Yeah.
installing fibre optics to a tenement, installing the PoE boxes above doors and communal walls where the lintels are located. Surely drilling through timber lintels to feed the cables through into each flat is not a good thing in a pre-1919 tenement.
Yeah.
So
Joe,
I
what's
suppose
your
there's
thoughts on that?
well, my thoughts are that if it's a listed building, they shouldn't be doing it without listed building consent, because you're not even allowed to put in an extract fan for a bathroom in the
Yeah.
wall without listed building.
Yeah.
So it depends what type of pre-1919 tenement it is. I would pretty much agree with everything you're saying. And I don't know who has authority over sorting that out, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we've had a few inquiries about this kind of the city fibre thing, or Scottish Gas Networks doing like gas upgrades and pipe upgrades and things, other kind of like telephone and internet connections, and we've always recommended that people go back to whoever the company is and just ask them about what kind of survey that they've done on the building, and what agreement that they've got from the owners to do it, and obviously speak to the other owners in the building and see if anybody has agreed to something, because a lot of the times in the past, I know particularly in Glasgow, they were, you know, as somebody from the company was just going out and knocking on doors, and it could be a tenant or, you know, an owner that answers and just said, oh yeah, we're thinking about doing something, and somebody said, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. They've signed it, no idea what they've signed. And you know, it's something that is like for a significant amount of work like this that could obviously have a detrimental effect. So it's worth having a chat with the owners and the company. Speak to the council as well if you're not sure about your listed status, or if you're in a conservation area.
Yeah.
And in other in certain cases, we've recommended that people seek independent legal advice from a solicitor, because you know, if something like that happens, it causes an issue, then who's going to be responsible for making that right? Because that can't necessarily just fall to the owners. There has to be some kind of like responsibility.
Oh yeah, City Fibre, I would suggest.
Yeah, but whether they want to accept that, or they're willing to go to accept liability for that is another whole other thing. So yeah, do a wee bit more research into that, Madeline, is what I would recommend. And if need be, speak to a solicitor, but as an absolute bare minimum, you need to speak to the other owners in the building, and you need to speak to City Fibre.
Okay, thank you. That is all of the questions in the Q&A. Thank you so much to all of you.
Lovely, thank you. Well, listen, everybody, I really appreciate your time today. Angus, thank you so much for all your questions. You've kept us going. Please, 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 keep in touch with us. And once you've got all of the, once you've got the recording and the slide deck and things, if anything comes to mind, or you want to speak to Joe or I or Kaylee on a one-to-one basis, then get in touch with us. You've got the email addresses will be included. So please, you know, keep in contact with us. Let us know what's happening. We're here to help. As soon as we get an update from the Scottish Government on how AWAB's law is likely to be implemented, we'll come back to you all and we'll let you know what other events that we're going to do. But all that remains for me to do is to thank Joe, Kaylee and Rebecca, and you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.